Welcome to this episode of Eureka. We are very honored to have with us the Vice Chancellor of Kashmir University, Professor Khurshid Iqbal Andrabi. Thank you, sir. Thank you for being with us and then sparing time in midst of your busy schedule.
Thank you very much. I'm privileged.
Professor Khurshid Iqbal Andrabi is a well-known researcher in the field of Bio Informatics. Born and brought up in Srinagar, he obtained his MSc degree in biochemistry from Kashmir University and did PhD from Postgraduate Institute of Medical Education and Research, Chandigarh. Professor Andrabi worked as post-doctoral fellow at Tufts Medical College, Boston and Department of Medicine at Harvard Medical School. Many of his papers have been published in reputed national and international journals. Professor Andrabi specializes in molecular signal transduction. As Kashmir University Vice Chancellor, he took the institution to new heights with his rich academic legacy, not only in terms of education but also the overall ambience of the institute.
I want to start with a question that I ask many people who come to the show. Your childhood. How do you remember your childhood? I mean, where were you born? What kind of ambience you had in your school, in your family? All those things matter for people to come up.
I have said it at many occasions that I perhaps am from a generation that is the luckiest generation.
Yes, sir.
In the sense that when I was born, the only means of communication was radio and a newspaper. There was no television, let alone mobile and internet. And then I am lucky because we lived to grow up to see a complete transformation in technological development. Such as
all
that,
happened during your life.
absolutely. Such as that you have mobile that does everything for you, and nobody can appreciate the technological revolution better than we do.
Yeah.
And I was born and grew up in downtown Srinagar in a family that largely had the legacy of having produced lots of educated people. So education was kind of imperative. It was as if we were born to get educated.
It was in the air. Around
Absolutely.
You in
There
the
was no
house.
other thing to be done other than getting yourself educated. So that was the inspiration for education. And our mental faculty developed on street. Those days, parents did not really pamper you all that much as you see these days. And so we virtually grew up on streets. I still believe that we grew up with better common sense than many children grow up today, only for the want of interaction with the kind of people we interacted with when we were children, as opposed to what they do in today's world.
I want to ask you something. Though you said that you come from a family which has had education as one of its imperative, and it was in the air, it was in the ambience of your family. What kind of people inspired you? I mean, whom would you call as your role model? I mean, in your school days, college days?
As I said, the education was, there was no choice but to get educated, regardless of whether you wanted to become something else or not. So in the first instance, when we were growing up, there were no specific role models. But then when we got to get ourselves exposed to, say, outside state and in the country and outside the country, and then you started realizing that there are people who you have never imagined anything about, and then you started making your role models. In the first instance, you have instincts, you have sort of your bent of mind.
Yeah.
And to begin with, we were into not necessarily science exclusively, but we got face to face knowing science on streets itself. That is how I started developing this mindset that, what you learn as an individual who is out there not really being bothered by other people. You learn more that way. Then when something is infused in you that you have to, you may not learn it as much.
Sir, another thing that I wanted to ask you, I mean, like I would say that I was very impressed to know is that you are a gold medalist in your masters. Can you tell us about your education? Like, what did you do on masters? What was your PhD? What did you do after that?
As I said, that there was this inspiration of science, knowing science and improving upon your common sense was always very much on priority with us. And then we did not want to do anything but science, simply only to improve upon your common sense much more. And so it did. And I ended up getting into one of the prestigious departments those days that had just started here at the university to get into biochemistry, despite the fact that I had other inclinations to go into law.
Okay.
But then this perhaps, as I said, the quest to improve upon your mental faculty was to overwhelm my instinct of going into law and getting into biochemistry. And then I actually started realizing that at the end of the day that my decision for going into biochemistry was much better than the other way. I still have this, sometimes these mental arousals in the sense that I still would like to go into law, but
you still think what would have happened if I had got into law?
Absolutely, absolutely.
But I think the science in India is thankful that you chose science. And, I mean, the science in the world, I suppose, should be thankful.
At the end of the day, I thought I was really involved in my master's program much better than I was during my college days, although I was a good student throughout. But it turned out that at the master's level, I pushed it a little more and did what I did in my master's.
So we should continue this discussion, and we are having a very wonderful conversation, but then we need to take a small break. Don't go away. We'll take a very small break and then we'll continue this conversation. Welcome back to this Eureka. We have with us the Honorable Vice Chancellor of Kashmir University, Professor Khurshid Iqbal Andrabi. Thank you, sir, being with us. And before the break, we were discussing about you growing up. I mean, you getting a gold medal in your masters. What was your PhD on? Where did you do your PhD?
I actually, those days it was difficult to travel also. We traveled in groups, and many students, we just traveled all over the country, including as far as Bangalore, Hyderabad, New Delhi. And then one of my teachers, although I got selected at many places, one of my teachers said that you could save lots of time and perhaps mend your career if you were to finish your PhD fast.
Fast, okay.
And then we searched for places like AIMS, where I was shortlisted, and in the end did not make it because only two candidates appeared in the final interview and one was to be selected. And then in the meantime, I had qualified this CSIR examination and had a fellowship, and I moved to PGI Chandigarh and managed to get my PhD from there in the end. And my PhD was on signaling of translational regulation.
Signaling of translation
regulation. And
within
that
the
I,
cells.
Absolutely. That I still continue.
Still continues. It's one of your passion that started from you. After your PhD, you went for postdocs.
Yes.
Can you sort of...
The first postdoc I did was at Tuft University Medical School, where I worked on similar aspects, which is a buzzword in cancer. Those are called specific domains, SH2 domains, SARC-homology 2 domains, which are a very typical signature domain in certain cancer-causing proteins. And I did that postdoc for a couple of years and then moved to Harvard University Medical School.
Harvard Medical School.
Yes, where there was a very active laboratory under the guidance of Professor Joseph Avrook, who is a pioneer in the field of insulin signal transduction.
Okay.
And in other words, growth factor signal transduction. And my major work as a postdoc and where I learned the maximum was in his laboratory.
In his laboratory.
Yes.
How was your experience there? I mean, after all, you grew up in Srinagar. I mean, you went to Chandigarh for your PhD.
I think it's very important to have this kind of experience. And as I said, I learned everything from there. The
It's only by experiencing different cultural connotation
not
that we
only
grow.
cultural, but you learn many things other than culture also. Number one, you learn how to experience humility.
Humility.
You learn you could be the best person on earth, but you still do not know that you are the best person on earth.
Yes. Okay.
And that is what perhaps is the biggest gift I got while my experience abroad. I must have rubbed shoulders with many Nobel laureates, but then they never looked like Nobel laureates, and they were as common and individuals as we here are. But then you start appreciating that despite being so big and despite being so brilliant, they still do not carry that ego of being anything better than the others.
Let's shift to your passion, which is studying cancer cell. Popularly, I mean, if I have to as to explain that phenomena, we all are born as single cell, and then the single cell grows, and then that's how we grow. We also grow in size because the cells can divide and become more, and then cells also become old, and then they die, and they have to be replaced. So somewhere there is some kind of a signal within the cell which say that now split. Say that okay, you have splitted enough, stop. So cancer is when this signaling is lost, and then there is an uncontrolled production of cells. That's what popularly, in a very simple way, one would perhaps explain. What was your work there? What were you looking at in this whole phenomena?
Every human cell responds for growth and proliferation to a signal that is usually called as hormone or growth factor. And that hormonal growth factor binds the cell on the external surface and then sends in different messages to different corners of the cell to perform different functions prior to division.
Prior to division.
Absolutely. It's not restricted to DNA alone. There are so many other things. It makes translational machinery ready for division because you may have to require lots of proteins. It also takes care of metabolism of the cell, whether we are in sufficient quantities. Do we
Building
have
material.
Absolutely. Do we have that is in sufficient quantities? Whether energy resource is sufficient before it commits itself to divide. This is exactly what is believed, that these kind of signals that go to different quarters and tell different things to be ready for this job, this job, this job. The cell prepares itself for division. And it is largely believed by research that somehow this signal is screwed up, and then either a wrong signal goes to some quarter,
Okay.
not having sufficient energy also makes a cell divide, not having sufficient nutrients also makes a cell divide. And this is what people are faced with, the researchers are faced with for the last so many years.
Okay.
And then there is a single large protein complex called mechanistic target of rapamycin.
Okay.
That is the central junction of
signals are
sending these signals to different quarters.
Okay. It's like a kind of a
It's
engineer or a masonry in a construction.
It's a kind of a receptor
Okay.
for video. It's this DTH. It's kind of that outside device
Okay.
that receives all these signals and then passes
Passes
it
on
on
to-
to channel 1, channel 2,
okay,
channel
okay,
3.
fine.
And this is what I have been working on during my postdoc. This is what we have continued to work on. And I think over the last 3-4 years, I think we are going in a direction which at some point we believe might be a breakthrough kind of a discovery in how mTOR actually passes these signals on.
Signals on to different places. Interesting. Now, just to shift our discussion, you came back from your postdoc with a very different kind of experience back to this university, Kashmir University. That's where you started your career in India. When you came back, I mean, this should have been one of those small universities which is trying to grow up, and you should have started this department from scratch. What was your struggle? What was your challenges during this time?
I think the biggest struggle was to basically spread the message that there is something that really can be done.
Okay. Really can be done.
Absolutely.
That
Regardless, I am the kind of person who will always try. Regardless of whether in the end I may fail also, perfectly acceptable.
You made a best effort.
Absolutely.
That's
I am not the kind of person who would be bogged down by people creating impediments, who would be bogged down by, monotony of the system. I am the kind of person who would keep on trying till it happens.
Interesting. Keep on trying. Don't get bogged down by challenges and hurdles. That's a very important message. And then maybe we have to take a very short break now, and then we'll continue this discussion. Welcome back to this Eureka, and we are very fortunate to have a erudite scholar and the Honorable Vice Chancellor of Kashmir University, Professor Khurshid Iqbal Andrabi. Thank you, sir. I mean, we were discussing about you coming back to India and setting up this department in Kashmir University before you became the Vice Chancellor. I go to US, I meet many of the Indians there, students. They are my Facebook friends. They send me a note back saying that, oh, I want to come to India, but the flush don't work. I don't get water. How can I come back?
That's ridiculous. I mean, if you want to come back, then come back as an Indian. If you want to be a foreigner in India, you will never succeed.
You don't be a foreigner in India.
Absolutely. You have to come back with the notion that you will face problems, you will face challenges, you will face impediments, you will face lots of hurdles. But then, if you start expecting this country to be exactly like America, that is something out of place. If you want to contribute, you have to contribute under the given circumstances. If you are ready to change sincerely, things around you will change. You basically have to be prepared to take risks, you have to be prepared to face problems, and then only you can make a difference. At the end of the day, I am happy that we were able to create a department which is as good as you find in US. Despite all these compelling circumstances.
We have to face the challenge. Somebody will not face the challenge and create a thing for us. I mean, it is we have to come back and then face a challenge.
What it has in the end done, having this department come up to a point where it becomes as good as international standards, we have now inspired at least 20 people working in US to come and work with us.
Oh, that's
They
great.
have already joined because they see things can happen here as well, and that is how the
So this is a
institutions
reverse
go.
brain drain.
Absolutely. This is we call it brain circulation. We actually want them to go out and come back and then contribute. That is why we call it brain circulation.
The moment you enter a university, even without reading the name board, you can know that whether it's a state university or a centrally funded university. Cleanliness, good facility, nice buildings. You can see. One thing that I should say, I was totally impressed, totally floored. The moment I entered into Kashmir University, this is the first time I'm coming here, was the neatness. Everything is fit as a fiddle. How did you achieve it?
I take that as a compliment, and we work very hard on ambience, because ambience is the first index of inspiration. And when you enter a lab, I will talk as a scientist only, the first thing you look at how the lab looks like.
Okay.
And then if the lab looks like the way it's to my liking, and then you enter and then start interacting with people. This is exactly how an institution looks like. It's exactly like a house should look like.
If a house is very sleepy.
Absolutely. If it's sleepy, then the entire atmosphere in the university would be sleepy. So it's important that you have everything in place, everything looks cozy, everything looks nice, and then you will start expecting people also to be nice. So the first thing is your makeup. And then that makeup actually drives to a point where you can read out about the mindset of the individual.
Another thing I should say that impresses me is, we came here on holiday. There were 3 continuous holidays. But I saw a lot of students. Not just students, teasing each other or, playing with each other. Of course, certain kinds of games are certainly necessary, but I mean playfully with being each other. But serious, they were sitting under a tree, reading together. I saw people in library during 3 days of continuous holiday. This is very different image that I have from many people say that today's young generation is spoiled, they are useless. What's your opinion? I mean, you have been an educator for quite long. You are also a vice chancellor of a university.
I'm glad you said that, and I think I must take it as a very serious compliment. And this is what we have been working on from day one. The vibrance of a university actually is a hallmark of a good university. This, in older times, was not as prevalent as it is today, in the sense that we were bogged down because of so many circumstances. We had natural calamities also. So, but it has picked up over the last 1 or 2 years, and I am really thankful to Almighty for this.
If I ask you, like, what are the 3 major challenges for higher education in India? What would be your response?
My response is known to one and all that the most important challenge to higher education is to perhaps propagate research much more than it has ever been propagated. Now, we started our department. It's a very small example that we started MPhil PhD program first, and then we started
The master's program.
the master's program. Because the inspiration comes from top to the bottom, not from bottom to the top. If you have excellent people teaching you, you will see the classes will be full. But
And you will be an excellent teacher if you are involved in research.
absolutely, because you will be excellent teacher only if you are not talking to the students exactly what is written on the book.
Yeah.
And then if you tell them something out of the book, then they start getting inspired.
Yes.
If you tell them exactly the same thing what is written in the book, you rather might hand over that book to the individual, ask him to read at home.
Yeah.
You have to have the same kind of recruitment policy in universities as is prevalent in the rest of the world. Unless you do that, you would never create an inspiration. Number two. Number two is that I have heard many people talk about problem-based research. And there are many advocates, I am only a very minuscule minority in saying something else. And nobody listens to people like us, obviously. I have seen people talk about problem-based research, and then we had research focused on green revolution of rice, and then we got that green revolution. Let me tell you, that is coincidental.
That's coincidental.
That is coincidental. Now, take those scientists who caused this green revolution. Ask them to work on maize, would they be able to do? No. What basically is lacking our culture, our setup, is that we have not trained every single individual as a carpenter in terms of basic research. Now, you go to any university in the world, you go to any laboratory in the world, you will see the same kind of basic infrastructure available in every lab, regardless of whether the person is working in neurobiology, he's working in medicine, he's working in cell biology, he's working molecular biology. And then you realize that all those guys are trained in basic biology to begin with.
So basics is the basics.
Absolutely. So unless you propagate basic research in India, this country will not catch up with the rest of the world.
That's it. Third.
Third is that our policy making has to be inclusive. The people who actually define regulations and other things in higher education have to be people who know higher education. Ironically, there are people who do a very bad job in drafting those regulations, and it takes 3 years, 4 years for them to draft those regulations, and then it takes 10 years to rectify those regulations.
Lastly, I want to ask you one important, if I ask you, what would be your message to the young India?
As I said, we have to be Indians.
We have to be Indians.
We do not have to be half Americans, half Indians. Even if we have to import a technology from America, please import it 100%. But work on developing our own technologies. Indians go out and make a wonder of a difference. Why can't we do it here on our own without being influenced by what is happening elsewhere? I think that is something we have to focus on, and that is something which will take us forward.
We are having a very wonderful and engrossing conversation with the Honorable Vice Chancellor of Kashmir University, Professor Khurshid Iqbal Andrabi. Humility, be an Indian, face the challenge. That's a key message that we are getting out of this conversation. So we are thankful to you for being with us in the show and then sparing your valuable time.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Pleasure is all.